Hey friends, welcome back to another Seed Talk with Lisa and Layne. Hey Layne.
Hello, Lisa. Are you enjoying the slightly cooler weather?
I am, and listening to raindrops is really making my heart go pitter patter. It's wreaking havoc on our summer third succession because they're just beautiful out there. But I'm willing to take the bullet because we need the rain so bad, right? So, friends, if you're joining us for the first time, we want to give you a really warm welcome. And so, this broadcast is brought to you by the Gardener's Workshop.com, which is home base to everything that we do. And we invite you to drop in over there. And Layne, what in the world are we going to talk about today?
Well, today we're going to talk about something that often confuses people about cool flowers, aka cool season hardy annuals that you might be planting out in the fall. So, if you're planting out a cool flower that's a branching cool flower that you might pinch if you were planting it out in very early spring or spring, well, what do you do with that flower if you actually are planting it out in the fall? Do you pinch it before it overwinters? Do you wait until very early spring or beyond to pinch it? So we're just going to be talking about what to do in that circumstance.
And Layne, I think that's such a perfect subject. I was literally just asked about this yesterday.
Oh,
So
perfect.
I think it is really, really perfect.
So, Lisa, before we get into specifically pinching fall planted cool flowers, what does it mean to pinch a plant? Why is that done? And where would you make the cut on a little baby plant?
Sure. So, to pinch a plant means to remove a good portion of the central stem. And so we are speaking exclusively of branching annuals. And that means that they get lots of side shoots. That happens natural for them. And what we're doing is we are going to remove the first center stem, which is the honker, as I like to call it, that grows up the middle. And you will pinch that. I pinch a little deeper than some people do, but I like to pinch just right above 3 to 4 bottom leaves because I find that the lower on the plant that the branching happens, just the stronger and longer those resulting stems are. So we do it for a lot. You can do it for many different reasons. The main reason that most people do it is to induce branching earlier because it will happen naturally on most plants, but it is very slow. They wait for, once you cut that central stem out as like a cut flower to harvest it, then that says like, all right, let's send up some more shoots by pinching early. Well, why it's a young plant just helps that to hurry it up. And we can talk, I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot of I save pinching in my back pocket as a triage tool, a rescue tool. Rarely do I do it just because we never have really time, but it is an amazing little step to take in your garden that can double or even triple the number of stems you get from one single plant.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate what you already said that when we're talking about pinching, you only want to pinch branching plants. You really do not want to pinch a single stem plant. If you have something like a single stem stalk, you don't want to pinch that plant because you might end up very likely not ever getting a flower. And also, it can be a little tricky because within different groups of flowers, there can be branching and non-branching in the same flower group. So some warm season examples are sunflowers. There are branching sunflowers. There are non-branching single stem sunflowers, and the same for coxcomb, right, Lisa?
Oh my gosh. And whose idea was this? To mix to mix these up. It's no wonder that people are confused. I mean, I won't even tell you. The first time I grew stock, I pinched it. I didn't have, I mean, that was back, that was a long time ago before we barely had internet. I had nowhere to just go look it up instantly to see or a book to read. And yeah, so totally hope that's a hit at home fact that people need to remember.
So before we talk about fall planted plants, if you have a cool flower that you want to pinch and you're planting it out in very early spring or spring, when would you typically pinch those plants?
So, I mean, I typically pinch what my goal is, if I'm going to pinch, is that I would pinch either 2 to 3 weeks before I was going to plant those plants out in the garden, or a couple, 3 weeks after I planted them out in the garden. So I think that it's not as important exactly when you pinch. It's just to try to minimize the stress to the plant, which pinching stresses them. I mean, it's just a new something new that the plant has to do. To pinch it and plant it on the same day, it might be okay, but you're giving them a double whammy. So that would apply to any time you're pinching.
And like you mentioned, a lot of times for a plant, maybe if you miss your window where you don't want to pinch, that very first harvest can act as a bit of a later pinch for the plant.
Exactly. I mean, that's what we kind of, and for warm season, we definitely do that. For all of our zinnias and coxcomb, we don't pinch them typically. I mean, it's the first harvest cut that is the pinch, because they're just so abundant and have such a long growing season.
Okay, now we're going to move on. So, do you typically pinch your fall planted branching cool flowers before they overwinter? So, if you're planting them out in the fall, do you in fact pinch them in the fall? And if not, when would you prefer to pinch those plants?
So that's a really great question. So as I mentioned earlier, that I often pinch out of a rescue. And so a classic fall planted situation is that you plant your fall planted cool flowers in that 6 to 8 week window before your first expected frost, and then the frost never comes. And then it just keeps being fall, and it just keeps being fall-like weather, which we tend to love as the human beings on the planet. But the cool season hardy annuals are thinking, this is great. We're just going to keep growing. And they grow actually too big and tall to go through winter and survive it just because there's too much vegetative matter on the top. So when that happens to me and my fall planted cool season branching annuals get too big, I'll pinch because a lot of times they're setting buds, they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And so I would pinch then in the fall. I prefer to pinch in very early spring. Let the plants, that's assuming they go into winter and go dormant in a good little size, just a small transplant. But when they start growing, I mean, that's the big problem with planting too early. People think, oh, I want to get them in the ground. I'm so excited. I don't want to miss. I would much rather plant transplants later than earlier in the fall because that's a big problem, them just getting too large. And so pinching can rescue you a little bit by pinching in the fall when they overgrow.
So, standard practice, you would not be aiming to pinch your fall planted cool flowers in the fall. However, you mentioned one circumstance where you would pinch them. Another instance where I know you pinch them in the tray is if your planting timeline gets a
Mm.
little bit delayed for some reason and they're getting too big in their little soil blocks.
Yeah, that is definitely another rescue mission. So let's just say that our goal is as soon as our seeds are started, like where we are right now, it's already stressing me. Where we are right now, we have tons of cool flowers that are like a half an inch tall, so many beautiful ones. Well, typically the next job on the list would be to make the beds to receive those plants in just a few weeks. And the minute we get those beds made, ready and waiting, it's like we can all sleep easy at night. Because if all of a sudden you start having really wet weather and it delays your making beds, or you've made your beds and you can't get in the garden for whatever reason, and you can't plant, and your beautiful little transplants are starting to like grow into ugly monsters because they're growing taller and there's not as much room in the tray. And so whenever I see that happening on the horizon, I will pinch. And I have to tell y'all, the sturdiest, nicest snapdragon seedlings we ever planted years ago. A girl that worked for me who did, I mean, that's when we were high production, meaning we were planting tens of thousands of plants each week. I mean, all the time. She said that the snaps that we pinched out of rescue because they were just getting too tall and big, and then they sat in the tray for another 3 weeks. See, that's key. We pinched them, and then they continued to stay in the tray and got watered and were kind of protected and got fed every week. Were the sturdiest and the most amazing root systems. Because when you pinch, it stimulates the roots to grow. So you can actually keep transplants in blocks or anything longer by making more room, because let me tell you, after you pinch them, it looks like a forest that's been deforested. It's
Yeah.
not very pretty at all, but then you wait a week and all the little shoots, start popping on them, and you realize what a good thing it was. We simply just never time it right to be able to do that as a standard practice.
Are there any flowers that you seem to notice yourself always having to either pinch in the trays for the reasons you just mentioned or in the ground if they start growing too big? Are there any that you notice from year to year are repeat offenders?
Snaps, I mean, for sure. I mean, we get a lot of messaging from people saying, oh my goodness, my snaps are, setting buds and setting blooms. And I'm just thinking, stock, which of course we don't fall plant, we plant that in very early spring. It typically can have that kind of behavior in the tray, but we just have to get it planted quick because you can't pinch single stemmed plants. But I would say snaps are definitely the number one offender for sure.
All right. Any other tips for people that do end up pinching their cool flowers in the fall?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing, but you don't want to over pinch, because that's a question I get too. People that automatically see, that's why I choose not to pinch routinely, because I might need to pinch out of a rescue. So let's just say we pinched all of our snaps as a regular habit in the tray, and then we plant them, and then fall goes on and on and on. You don't really want to do a lot of more pinching. Each time you pinch the plant, it's like making one potential new stem turn into potentially three or four new stems. Well, the more stems you make from one plant, the shorter and the more spindly that stem will be. So you'll get more stems, but they won't necessarily be great stems. So I choose not to pinch for that reason, to keep that kind of in my back pocket, you might say, to be able to do it if we need to. And that's why if I just say, all right, we won't pinch until very early spring, all that risk is past. So that's what's kind of what I'm thinking about.
And I know we will get asked this. If you do end up pinching in the fall, would you not pinch those same plants again in the spring?
Yes,
Is that
exactly. The more you pinch, the more stems there are, and the more stems, the shorter they'll be, and the more spindly. So it sounds like a great idea. Trust me, talking from experience, it doesn't work very well.
all right? That was it for that episode. If you have any more questions about your fall planted cool flowers, please feel free to let us know. You can leave a comment over on YouTube or you can use the form linked in the show notes. And thank you so much for watching or listening. Please be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you are. And thank you so much for being here with us. We hope you're having a great growing season.
So, friends, we do appreciate you dropping in, and remember that thegardenersworkshop.com is home base to our fully stocked online garden shop, our online course library, tons of free resources, and we'd love for you to sign up for our farm news where you won't miss anything. And so, friends, till we meet again, ciao.
Bye.